Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. You've asked for him, Peter Thomas. Everybody's been questioning gold and silver and precious metals, so here we go. Peter Thomas, Chairman of Vegas Secure. How are you, man?
I'm good. Always a pleasure to be back with you, Stephen. It's nice to see you made it back to sunny Florida with all the snow that we just had. You got away, huh?
I walked out the New York Stock Exchange and I was like, "What is this? This white stuff."
Yeah,
I don't like this white stuff, but
yeah, I get it, man.
Definitely. All right, let's get to it. Everybody's been complaining about it. Everybody wants to know what's going on and question marks around gold. Gold has popped again. I'm going to pull up the chart here. 42.03 right now. Talk to me. Who's buying? What's going on here, man?
But it's a big cake, so we're going to have to go into some of the recipe here, Steve. And the first one, of course, is which people aren't aware of. It's Indian wedding season. We just came out of Diwali. Now we're going to go into the wedding. Gold is probably one of the primary gifts, and the Indians in Diwali and in this recent demand has been a lot more than I thought it would be at these levels. So. And also silver as well, which we'll get into in a minute. But also, rate cut talk is still fresh in the air. We're looking for a December cut. That's also feeding into it. And then, of course, demand is still pretty darn good. So those three things have really helped to give it a push. And the Chinese government came out and took a tax off of gold and then put it back on. So it's been very strange. I'm kind of waiting to see how that gets maturated by the market as well, you know?
Yeah, and you look back, it was not even that long ago, right? Back in October, where the big run up was in gold, and we got to about 42.18 all the way up to 43.55, somewhere around there, 4,400 almost. Talk to me a little bit. Are we going back? Are we busting those numbers apart, or are we going to just sit here for a little bit?
We saw, well, let me give you a tip here. I was watching the ETFs, and you know, for a while it took a moment to start seeing an inflow. Then we saw a rather large inflow, and then subsequently, boom, we saw people flooding on the 40. People just took off. All of a sudden, we were seeing profit taking across the board. And then once it started to spiral and we got momentum, the algos picked up on it, and boom, we got hit hard. And people just said, you know what? I'm happy. I bought it at 2,000, 2,300. I've almost doubled my money. I'm out. And it drifted back down, as you can see from that's a very good chart. It drifted back down, found support. And as you and I have talked about in our last show, I wanted to see gold trade horizontally for a while and build some basing under the right at that blue line you just inserted there. And now it started to leg up a little bit. Very interesting formation for the technicians here.
Yeah, and of course, when we ask about gold, we got to ask about silver following suit here. Same thing here, right, Peter?
And I'll tell you something that maybe we should open this box for a minute. For our viewers, people who are familiar with Blue Owl or who have been following the new campus that they're building. It's massive for AI, and all of a sudden they came out and went, "Oh, by the way, we're gonna need to start fueling it with electricity," and silver exploded because they started to mention nuclear reactors. And here's my point to this. And there's always a little method to my madness, Steve. And the bottom line was your full size. There's multiple sizes of reactors, but your full size nuclear reactor uses 54,000 ounces of silver per reactor, and they're going to need. Yeah, they're going to need. Now, honestly. It's a lot or not. I've traded that much in a week myself. It's not a big deal, but it doesn't come back. That's the thing. It's non-recyclable. So when it comes off the table, it's gone. So that is interesting in and of itself. A lot of
I just watched the new movie Frankenstein on Netflix, and that guy Dr. Frankenstein wanted silver. right? I mean, he wanted a silver conductor.
Oh, well, it's interesting. It makes sense. So, they use it in the rods, and once it's exposed to radiation, it gets powdery. It can't be recycled. They have to bury it in the desert, and subsequently we lose all that metal. And so I listened to his speech and dropped into one of his open ends, and he said that they're going to try to use as many windmills as they can. And I sat down with Scott Poland, who I said to him, he's involved with directional electricity and brokering it. And I said, hey, what's going on with this? And he said, look, they can't do it with windmills. They're going to need 54,000 acres of land in order to set all those windmills up. And I said to him, what? I said, that has to be the biggest number I've ever heard. And he said, oh yeah. He goes, they have they can only be so close. They're gigantic. And he said, look, they're going to have to use coal. He said, coal is terrific. It's easy to set up quickly. It burns clean with new technology. They're also going to have to do natural gas. And I said, okay, natural gas sounds great. And he says, yeah, the only problem is that Siemens is back ordered for 7 years for the turbine blades that spin off of the steam that's pushed through. Mm-hmm. So he said, we're probably not going to see that happen. So it's going to be windmills, so then I dug down, Steve, on this just for our viewers here, and said, wait a minute, how many nuclear reactors, how fast? In the past 35 years, they've had 7 reactors built, of which 2 or 3 were for testing, basically, checking out models, big or small, but they weren't real functional. They had 2 medium and then like 1 large. So they built 1 in 3.5 decades.
Right.
So honestly, I don't know where the power is going to come from other than from windmills. And it just doesn't look good, Yeah.
And I mean, I have to ask that question when we look at the builds of nuclear reactors. It takes a long time too. It's not an easy project. It takes a lot of concrete, right? We know that it takes a lot of silver. It takes a lot of water. People don't realize it needs water, right? You got to boil that water to make the steam.
And in a lot of cases, it's specialized water too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, heavy water. Yeah. And so
H3O2, right?
Yeah, heavy water. And so when we look at all of this, and I look at the price of silver and I look at the price of gold, it just seems to be that there's not enough gold and silver in the world to keep match up to what we need for just nuclear or paper, all of it, right? I think the price is really out of whack. I think we go way higher, right, Peter?
Mathematically, my last paper I wrote, which you posted and posted again for this show for people on Korea, for example.
Yeah.
If Korea came in and said, oh, by the way, we have $430 billion in backup reserves, and we think we're going to push, they didn't give us an amount, but we're going to push a fair amount of it into gold. Let's just say it's 250 tons. They have 100 tons in their vaults. All right. Well, we only produce 1,200. We only produce 1,200 tons a year, which means they're going to take 20 or 30%, one small country, off the table with permits languishing in Washington forever. No new mines coming on board. Right. You're number-wise, Steve, just in gold alone, you're 100% correct.
So with that kind of buying and necessary need for silver and gold, we really shouldn't even expect 4,000 to 5,000, right? On gold.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, it was interesting. J.P. Morgan, who came out today for the first time in their research department and said that they were looking second quarter for higher prices in gold as well. So we're seeing a lot of research rooms that are well known coming out and agreeing with you on that.
Wow. All right, Peter, let's get to it. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, and you've talked about it yourself, and that's Dr. Copper itself, right? Copper is right around 516 and going back up again, right?
Well, where did I put my buyout for all of our viewers? Around 460, right? So 460, 470, I told everybody it was time to get on board. And I just don't see any reason not to. I mean, California, its infrastructure is shot. It's just garbage. They have to rebuild half the states, quite seriously. And that's just one state. This is a big country, so demand is realistically next year we go into the scale of auto manufacturing that they're pushing for here, washers, dryers, all the things that use copper, let alone transmissions, which is your heavier cables, which are very large and use a lot of copper. We could see very large demand, and 550 is definitely within reach mid next year, no problem.
Wow. All right. We saw a big sell signal coming up on copper right around $6. Is that the top that you're looking at?
I'll tell you what, that it's going to get real dicey up there. It's going. What will drive that first, Steve, is interest rates. We got to see where we're at as far as, that's going to be a big number on that. And secondly, it's going to be car sales. And, you and I had a discussion at length about defaults on auto loans, if you remember. And, so we're, as far as new car consumption goes in this nation, it's a very difficult, it's a guess at this point, but they use 30 pounds per auto, but they use 420 pounds per new home construction. So if we get, that release valve kicks in, lower interest rates, more home construction sales, better mortgages, we're going to see monstrous demand on copper.
Yeah, I look at it from the metal side of things too, as well. And the QQQs, technology, our phones need gold, and our phones need silver, and our phones need metals. Yet tech's pulling down a bit the last few weeks. Dow's pushed up, but the Nasdaq heavy tech is being sold off, right?
Right. And the question is, from my standpoint, is I deal in the physical world and I look at demand. Demand hasn't slowed up that much. Demand has been steady. I think the bubbling and the cooking going on within the buying frenzy and the Dow and whatnot has pushed them up. But the underlying basis, I mean, honestly, look at Apple sales. They've been really good, So yes. To me, I'm just looking at that as trading, and on my side, demand still looks good. And I look at the reality of, is there going to be enough money to buy the commodity, and will the commodity be available? And right now we're seeing dwindling supplies, and we're seeing demand stay about the same.
So over the weekend, I had an interesting conversation, and I mean, people saying, hey, what, Steve, you're right about the options markets, and you're right about the futures markets. There was a misconception for a lot of traders about what happens when you make a mistake in the futures markets, and you're going long in gold,
yeah,
and you don't sell your position before the contract comes due. And you have to take delivery of that 100,000 ounces of gold.
Right.
How does that work, Peter? And I can explain it, but I think let's let you explain it to people.
Well, as you know, I was what's referred to as a taker and maker for many years. I was probably one of the largest takers in the industry. And there's two things that can happen. One is they come to you and they go, all right, by the way, you have a 100-ounce bar of gold waiting for you here. Where do you want it delivered? You know, that's the question. And then what 99.9% of the people go, oh my God. And it's very rare, by the way. In the old days, it could get overlooked, but nowadays, you know, there's, you know, the emails are going out, you know, send in X amount of dollars. This is cash now, you know. Now you can file that certificate in your account and sign it up so you have equity in your account. So you can redeliver it in the next month, or you can sell it, you know, one or the other. But it isn't as scary as it used to be, where you're running around looking for buyers and whatnot. Most houses nowadays, because the smaller houses have congealed, they're small, and they're now bigger houses that have a cash desk and they can redeliver, Steve. So it used to be really scary to get those notices, you know, and they were pink. You know, they would come in, they'd lay
back in the day. That's right.
You'd go.
You knew when they were coming to your house what was going on.
Oh yeah, and you know, I would just pick up the phone and call the Hunts and go, oh, by the way, you know, send 18 million. I got some deliveries today, and they just wire it in, and that'd be that, you know. But nowadays, it's a little bit different. But you know, there's so many. The market is so sophisticated, Steve.
Right.
You know, I was writing calls all day, and oh, by the way, I'm going to lay it off there, and you know, I want to direct it over here, and then it's a little bit different game for guys that play in the physical delivery, you know.
Yeah, but I'm concerned about those in the Robinhood, E-Trade, you know, the retailer not get. Congratulations, you now own a million barrels of oil. Congrats, you know.
Yeah, well, if it's a deliverable certificate, it's got a lot of homes, you know. Nothing else that can call me, I'll buy it.
All right, there we go. Peter Thomas, I appreciate your thoughts today on the nuclear reactors and how we're handling that with silver and gold. And then, of course, your thoughts process on gold. Last thoughts, Peter. The weather seems to be getting colder and colder and colder in the wintertime. Are you seeing the same? You know, you said it's wedding season in India, and all the other things that geopolitically that go around metals. Is there anything in the weather that you're seeing that could affect the metal prices?
Not dramatically. You know, transmission into people that do use electrical devices. You know, heaters, things of that nature, you know, home heating units that are electrically powered. You will see a bit of a spike up. The question is, can the infrastructure handle it? It's usually not that dramatic. So I would say you'd see a little increase, but not as significant as you would think, you know.
Excellent. All right, Peter, we'll see you right back here next week, man. Thanks a lot.
Sounds like it. Take care now, everybody.